Hello and welcome. You are listening to Pint Size Therapy, where we explore all things related to mental health healing, personal growth and development, emotional wellness, and the human experience in pint-sized bites. I am your host, Dr. Aletha Clark, a licensed psychotherapist, certified hypnotherapist, and master addiction counselor, and I am happy to have you here with me today as you embark on your mental wellness journey. While I appreciate you tuning in, don't forget this podcast is informational only and is not a substitute for seeking out your own mental health counseling with a licensed professional. So join me as we jump into today's episode. Hello and welcome back, everyone. As we continue to honor National Recovery Month, I want to invite you into a conversation that gets to the heart of what so many people in recovery and their families experience every day: trauma, addiction, and dual diagnosis. This year's theme is Recovery is Real, restoring every aspect of life. And part of restoring life means not only addressing substance use, but also the depression, anxiety, PTSD, or other mental health struggles that so often come alongside it. So in today's episode, we're going to explore how trauma changes the brain, why addiction can take root as a survival strategy, and what dual diagnosis really means, and how recovery must focus on the whole person. Along the way, I'll share some research, a real-life example, and some practical tools that can help bring both hope and healing. When someone has both a substance use disorder and a mental health condition like depression, anxiety, or PTSD, we call this a dual diagnosis or co-occurring disorder. And the fact is that this actually is not very rare. In fact, it's more common than not. Many people who struggle with addiction are also carrying untreated trauma or mental health symptoms. In the U.S., about 21.5 million adults live with both a substance use disorder and a mental health condition. That's roughly 1 in 3 people with a mental health condition also struggling with substance use. Nearly half of people with a substance use disorder will experience another mental health disorder at the same point in their lives. And among teens, more than 60% of adolescents in treatment for substance use also meet criteria for another mental health condition. And even further, co-occurring conditions are associated with more negative life outcomes: increased rates of hospitalization, higher risk of homelessness, legal involvement or incarcerations, lower cognitive functioning, and more health comorbidities. So why does this matter? Because recovery can't just focus on the substance use alone. If we only treat the addiction without actually addressing the depression or the trauma, it's like fixing a leaky roof while ignoring a cracked foundation. Things might hold for a little while, but eventually the deeper issues resurface. So let's talk about trauma, not just as an event, but as something that reshapes the brain and body. When trauma happens, the amygdala, the brain's smoke alarm, gets hyperactive. It's like the alarm is stuck on high alert, blaring even when there isn't actual danger. Stress hormones like cortisol flood the system, keeping the body tense and on edge. Meanwhile, the prefrontal cortex, that's the part of the brain that helps us reason, plan, and even control impulses, that actually gets weaker. It's harder to think clearly or hit pause on destructive decisions. And the dopamine system, the brain's reward pathway, it starts to misfire. Things that once brought joy feel flat, and substances can feel like the only way to lighten things up again. In other words, trauma changes the brain in ways that make someone more vulnerable to addiction. And when you add in other risk factors like genetics, poverty, unstable housing, or discrimination, the risk for developing both substance use and mental health disorders grow even higher. And research has shown that. People with histories of trauma are more likely to develop both mental health disorders and substance use disorders. For many people, addiction begins as a way to cope. Substances become a way to numb the pain, to quiet the anxiety, or to silence the memories that won't stop replaying. So let me share a fictional example. Imagine Timothy. He grew up in a home with domestic violence. As a child, he learned to always be on edge, waiting for the next outburst. As a teenager, he developed anxiety and depression. By the time he reached his 20s, he discovered that drinking helped him quiet his racing thoughts. For a while, it felt like relief. But over time, alcohol took more and more from him. It took his health, his relationships, and his sense of self. Timothy's story isn't unusual. Addiction isn't about a lack of willpower. It's about survival. It's an attempt to manage pain when healthier tools aren't available or feel out of reach. The heartbreaking reality of dual diagnosis or co-occurring disorders is that it becomes a cycle. Alcohol might numb Timothy's trauma flashbacks for a few hours, but afterward, his depression deepens, his anxiety spikes, shame creeps in, and that shame fuels the next drink. This is the chicken and egg problem. The mental health symptom feeds the addiction, and the addiction worsens the mental health symptoms. And here's something really important. When people with co-occurring disorders struggle in recovery, it isn't about that failure. It's just a reflection of how our treatment system has historically failed people with co-occurring disorders. And the statistics back this up. Research shows that people with co-occurring disorders are about twice as likely to relapse or struggle with treatment compared to those facing only one condition. And yet, more than half of people with co-occurring disorders don't receive treatment for either condition. Less than 10% receive care for both their substance use and their mental health. And why? It's because our system often separates the two. One program treats addiction, but ignores the depression. Another treats anxiety, but ignores the drinking. Even though we know integrated treatment addressing both sides together produces far better outcomes, only about half of treatment programs are actually set up to offer it. And when you combine it with all the other compounding factors of homelessness, legal involvement, lower cognitive functioning, and even other health issues, it is almost impossible to focus on recovery when your other basic needs are not being addressed. So if someone you love has struggled to stay in treatment, relapsed, or felt stuck, please hear this. It isn't because you failed. It's because the system failed you and has not always met you with the care, support, and integration you deserve. Recovery becomes possible when both the addiction and the mental health condition are treated together. When care is integrated, coordinated, and designed to meet the needs of the whole person, and when we stop placing the burden solely on individuals to navigate a fractured system. But the good news is that recovery is possible even with a co-occurring disorder. But it takes an integrated approach. It takes a combination of things such as trauma-informed therapies, where the focus isn't just on stopping use, but on healing the root wounds. Medication that can help stabilize mood, reduce cravings, treat depression and anxiety. Support groups that recognize the reality of dual diagnosis. Even case management, which can address those issues such as homelessness or unemployment or just lack of supports. Daily practices like grounding exercises, journaling, mindfulness, and movement to calm the nervous system. And building safe relationships and routines that create stability. And let me emphasize, recovery is just not about being abstinent. Recovery is about restoring the whole person, your body, your mind, and your spirit. And so as we wrap up, Let's bring it back to this month's theme. Recovery is real, restoring every aspect of life. If you're listening and you've experienced both trauma, depression, anxiety, and addiction, or what we call a co-occurring disorder, I want you to hear this clearly. Struggling in recovery is not a sign that you've not been successful or that you failed. It's a sign that the supports available to you may not have always been enough. Our systems don't always make it easy to find integrated care, and too often people are left trying to navigate this journey on their own. Recovery is not easy and it's not a straight line, but recovery is possible. Healing is possible, not only from substance use, but also from the mental health challenges and the trauma that often live alongside it. Recovery means rebuilding the whole of you, your mind, body, and spirit. And that process looks different for everyone. So as you move forward, I invite you to take one small step. That could mean reaching out for support, practicing a grounding skill when you feel triggered, or simply reminding yourself that you are worthy of care and healing. And remember, this journey isn't about perfection. It's about the progress, the connection, and the restoring your life piece by piece. Because recovery is not just real, it's possible, and it's for you. As always, thank you for joining me today on Pint-Sized Therapy. If you found this conversation meaningful, I invite you to leave me a comment, like, subscribe, and share with your family and friends. Come visit my website at pintsizedtherapy.com and my Etsy shop at pintsizedtherapy.etsy.com, where you will find resources to accompany our various discussions and encourage you to continue your wellness journey. Once again, I am Dr. Aletha Clark. Until next time, remember to protect your peace and take care of your mental health.